All right, here we are, I believe this is week 15,
Yep,
MJ,
that's right.
for our Bible reading plan podcast. And so I'm Chuck. I've been here a few times, but we're joined with MJ. I think you had a special podcast of your own to
Sure
introduce you. I'm not going to call you the new youth minister anymore because I think we already claimed you and you're already here and we need you to do a bunch of work. So,
Hey, sounds good.
And me and you have something in common because I think we are both big Braves fans, right?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
So now finally the real sports have started,
That's
so
right.
we can be happy now.
It's
right?
the most wonderful time of the year.
Yeah, that's right. I like to poke all my Alabama and Auburn friends to let them know that the Atlanta Braves, if they'll win, then that's a celebration.
That's right. Exactly.
All right, so we're off to week 15, and we're into a lot of Isaiah. We'll be in Isaiah for several weeks now, which is good, and especially given the time of the year. So I think that's where we're going to start with the highlight, right, in Isaiah. So hit us.
Yeah, absolutely. So in Isaiah chapter 6 is when Isaiah, has this vision from God. And,
Right.
He says that the train of his robe fills the entire throne room. And, for a lot of us today, I don't think we always imagine that. But literally God's majesty and his robe of his kingliness is all over the room. It's everywhere.
The glory is just filling the whole place.
It's all over him, right? And so Isaiah comes in, and the seraphim, the scary angels, not the pretty ones, but the scary ones,
not the chubby cheek ones. Yeah,
that's right. They're hovering, saying that the Lord is holy.
Right.
And Isaiah comes in and he's seeing this, and he just realizes in that moment how unworthy and how sinful and how just terrible not only he is, but also the entire nation of Israel, right? And I think it's great that this is our reading right after Easter. We get to celebrate the death and the resurrection of Jesus, and for us to look at that and be so grateful and so thankful, and to look at ourselves and say, wow, I am so sinful. And the salvation isn't because of me. It's not because of anything I've done. I'm the reason Jesus had to hang there, right?
Oh, yeah.
What is it? The old song goes, I'm the one that put the nails in his hands, right? It's my fault.
Exactly.
And so Isaiah realizes how sinful and how, broken him and Israel are. And God, forgives him of that with the symbolism of putting the burning coal on his tongue.
Oh, right.
And in the same way, Jesus forgives us. And he says, if you come to me, I'll put my blood on you, and that'll wash you completely white as snow.
Right.
So I think it's something good to look at and to realize here and remember, we're sinful, we're broken.
Right.
And it's easy to get boastful, especially after being a Christian.
Yep.
The longer you do it, it's easier to be more boastful.
That's right. You think you've got it all figured out. That's exactly right. And I love the attitude of Isaiah, because I think when you talk about being boastful, being prideful, he has none of that. When he's experiencing God, when he's in his presence, he is broken, to the point of, woe is me, I don't stand a chance.
Sure.
And pride gets in the way of our asking for forgiveness, or even thinking that we need forgiving, right? So that humbleness. And when you talk about that coal too, that coal didn't destroy. You would think, here comes the angel. He's coming. He's about to wipe me out. He didn't. He cleaned him up with the coal. Right. It's just amazing. And for that to parallel, what Christ has done for us and our attitude toward him, that is an amazing comparison there.
Yeah, and talking about Isaiah's attitude, I think that the way that we get it so wrong is the first thing Isaiah says is, oh my gosh, I'm so sinful.
Right.
When the first thing we say to God is, God, can you just fix this?
Oh, yeah.
Or God, can you fix that person?
Yeah.
And we never look at ourselves.
Or it wasn't my fault.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, somebody made me do it.
Exactly.
Devil made me do it.
Yeah. And so I think we miss God.
Right.
So many times we miss his presence because we're, like you said, we're too prideful. We've got too much in here that's about us instead of about being ready to do whatever God tells us to do.
Yeah, and immediately then after that scene, he immediately says, God says, "Who's going to go?" And he says,
Me.
I'll go.
Yeah.
Let me go.
That's
please.
right.
And man, that's even just adds on to what Jesus did for us, right? He saved us, but then he also said, "Go."
Yeah.
And we're to cry out that same thing. I'm here. Send me.
Right. I mean, his last words, right? It's go make disciples. Like, go and tell all these people. Like, the last thing somebody tells you is normally pretty important, right?
Yeah, didn't save us to sit, save us to go.
That's right.
That's an amazing thought, and it is so. And again, and I think I've repeated this a gazillion times, if gazillion is a number, but how much the Old Testament, just has such great parallels with our, a lot of times we think it's outdated, it's dusty, it's it's not relevant anymore, but boy, it just hammers home, Jesus Christ, and my life and the way I should live.
Yeah,
so.
He said he came to fulfill it, and if we're going to live like Jesus, then
Right.
those things apply to us too.
Right.
Maybe not in the same sense as the Israelites, but it's there for us to learn, to mold us, to change us.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
well, I think you had the highlight for this week.
I've got the shadow.
The shadow,
Yeah,
sorry.
you just did the highlight,
My
but
bad.
that's okay.
Hey, first time, a new guy,
And I think this kind of plays into that because we don't often picture God. Maybe we put God into, I don't want to say small of a place. We don't capture His whole glory.
Sure.
We don't. You hear people talk about the big man upstairs or something. We kind of belittle God to a certain degree. We don't think about that majesty. And here in Leviticus 11, Leviticus is just full of rules, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot of rules. But in Leviticus 11, in particular, he's talking about clean and unclean animals and which animals they can eat and which ones they can't. And just to read a little bit of it, the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, "Tell the Israelites, you can eat all kinds of land animals. You may eat any animal with divided hooves and that chews the cud. But among the ones that chew the cud and have divided hooves, you're not to eat the camels, the hyraxes, the hares, the pigs." Anyway, it goes on to, even list out some within that first category that says, well, no, but not these either. And then he starts talking about, fish that has scales are okay, but those that aren't. And it gets really confusing, right? And some were and some weren't, and now, because this would have said you can't have a barbecue rib, and I like barbecue ribs,
Yeah,
and I like
absolutely.
pulled pork sandwich.
Oh, yeah.
And I like shrimp, and I like oysters, and lobster's a delicacy now. So all those things we eat. And we understand that we're in the new covenant, and Paul says, eat what you eat what you eat. The eat doesn't define you, what you're
Right.
eating. But why give this? It's just why give such detailed rules? And you read some of the commentaries, and some of it's to separate them from what the pagan, people did, and some of it was for health reasons, just because of. I was almost thinking about, if you've ever ate a catfish from a river versus a grain-fed, pond-raised catfish,
Right.
There's a huge difference.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And some of it was for health reasons. But really, when you come down to it, there's not a lot of reasons why this is, other than, so Keegan, have you ever told Keegan to do something and he comes back and asks you the one question, the one word?
Yeah. Why?
Why? And do you sometimes just say, because I told you so,
Yeah.
right? Because it's either too much for him to comprehend, or there's just a reason that he'll never understand, or it's just something that's your rule.
Right.
And it's not, it may not have to be explained. Sometimes we want God to explain everything to us, and that's just not necessary.
Sure.
I think He just gives us sometimes some rules and some things to follow to see if we will do what He tells us to do, and especially His chosen people. Then, are you really mine? Will you do just what I tell you to do, no matter what? I was trying to think of, even in, obviously these laws aren't applying to us now, but things that maybe we don't understand, like when Jesus says, forgive 70 times 7.
Right.
Well, that sounds a little excessive to me, right?
Sure.
And just in my natural mind, I say, yeah, that's a bit much. I don't know that I could forgive somebody 490 times, if my math is right. But it's just saying, just do it.
Right.
Right? Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. And I was actually thinking about this earlier today because I reading the account of Noah. Because we're getting ready for All in April with the youth, and the first theme's tie-dye night. Well, who we're going to incorporate? The rainbow guy, right? But I'm reading this, and it talks about how God is like his heart's hurting because he made humanity, and he made us, and we've jacked it all up, right? And then I think about the other times where it says that God changed his mind. Well, we know God really doesn't ever change his mind, but God can't explain everything to us in a way that we'll understand. So he has to use things that we understand so that we can almost try to grasp it. And I think sometimes, like Leviticus, is the same way. Like, yeah, it's good for our health probably, especially then because they don't have all the standards we have now. They don't have all those things.
That's
they also set them apart. But sometimes God just says, do it. You can't understand the reason. So
it's a faith thing, too, because I was almost thinking, Thomas... he says, I want to see the scars. I want to see that before I will believe. It's almost like, Lord, I want you to tell me why I got to do this before I will follow you. Instead of just do what I say. Because we've got a God that cares for us, wants the best for us, and wants the best life path and the life for us. So that's the best way to go. He sees
the
it
whole
all.
thing,
so
not just what we
quit
got.
arguing, just do it, and quit trying to understand necessarily all the time. It is good to understand some, and some are very obvious why, but sometimes it's just do it.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Just do it.
That's right.
So I think we go off then to our application for the week, and I think you got some Psalms maybe that you were talking about.
Absolutely. And so all 4 of these for this week, they're all written by David. And when I think about David, I think about King David. First thing everybody thinks about is David and Goliath, right? And King David, he's strong. Probably the next thing is David and Bathsheba, and betraying Uriah, who was one of his closest friends. But like when you think of the character of David, not like his integrity character, but like his overall picture of who he was. This guy's a warrior. He slays lions and bears and giants, and he goes to war, and he's not scared. Goes and just does all this crazy stuff.
He's a bad dude.
Yeah, he's a bad
because
dude.
he goes over a Goliath, right, and slaps his head off, right, and holds it up, and he's a teenager or a young man at that point in time.
And when he becomes king, he has his mighty men, right, and all these guys that are around him, and they respect him as one of the greatest warriors, and they're probably the greatest warriors maybe ever, right?
That's right.
And so David's got all these guys, and he's the warrior. So much so that God said, you have blood on your hands, you won't build the temple, it'll be Solomon.
Right. That's right.
And we look at these Psalms, and in every one of them, David's not on the attack here. David's on the defense. He uses words like refuge, strong tower, fortress, the shadow or the shelter of your wings. Instead of being on the attack like he normally is, he's saying, I know that I can't do this. God has to be the one that defends me, and I've got to find my strength and my power in who he is. And so, let's see, I think he uses refuge 4 times. He uses strong tower or fortress or like that, was it fortitude, right?
Wow.
He uses that 3 times. The shadow, shelter of your wings, which means protection, security, guidance, care. He uses it twice over these 4 Psalms. And continually talks about God's steadfast love that is his defense, that God's going to take care of him no matter what. And I think so many times, especially in our culture, we're on the offensive to get out in front of everything when God says, I'll protect you, I'll take care of you.
That's right. And there's no shame in saying, I need God, I need him. Before he went to Goliath, I think he said, it's not me that's going to do this.
Right.
The Lord's going to deliver this knucklehead over here,
Yeah.
right, into His hands. And when when we were talking about the Psalms, Psalm 63, I love this one verse. Just at the beginning of it says, "God, you are my God. I eagerly seek you. I thirst for you. My body faints for you." It's just he was the best warrior, the best.
Oh, yeah.
When he first sought God, because he had failures and he did make mistakes, but it was when he left God out of the equation.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And I think about, you look at that idea of I'm finding my protection and everything in God. And I think about the 3 Hebrew children, right, when they're about to be thrown in the furnace.
Right.
And one of my favorite verses, and they say, but even if he doesn't save us, he's still good.
Oh, yeah.
Because sometimes his defense of you is letting you be with him.
Wow.
And David knew that, like, my refuge is in you. Like, my security is in you. Whether it's here or there, you're my security.
Right.
And I can never get away from that.
Wow. And you think about applying that to our own lives, because we often talk about, hey, you're not David. Don't act like you're David. You're not out there slaying giants or whatever. But we can take from David's life to be strong and to be bold in the Lord, I guess is maybe a good word, but never leave the Lord. Understand who that power is coming from, and that's from the Lord, not from yourself.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
So turn to the Lord I think is a good application.
Yeah,
is it
absolutely.
Not?
Yeah, let him be your defense.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Well, it's been fun.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
appreciate you joining us this week, and we will see you guys next week.